They build the modern world with plastic, glass, and wire. They manufacture heat without a single hairy fire. The screens are always glowing, the digital is loud. The synthetic heavy blanket covering the crowd. I turn my back upon the artificial flashing street and retreat into a heavy analog defeat. I find my heavy shelter in the hollow of the wood, the only physical space where the quiet is understood. It doesn't need a battery, it doesn't need a cord. It is a heavy raw defense against the heavy absent Lord. You wrap your heavy arms around the heavy wooden chest and let the heavy vibrations put the heavy mind to rest. The cedar smells like heavy rain and ancient quiet dust, a physical reminder of a heavy silent trust. The sound hole is a cavern, a heavy dark escape, where every heavy sorrow takes a heavy physical shape. You strike the heavy copper and the heavy frequencies ring, the purest, heaviest truth that the heavy hands can bring. I find my heavy shelter in the hollow of the wood, the only physical space where the quiet is understood. It doesn't need a battery, it doesn't need a cord. It is a heavy raw defense against the heavy absent Lord. You wrap your heavy arms around the heavy wooden chest and let the heavy vibrations put the heavy mind to rest. Cannot calculate the heavy wooden tone. They cannot replicate the feeling in the heavy tired bone. We are the heavy resistance playing in the heavy dark, protecting the survival of the heavy analog spark. Just the wood, just the string. Let the hollow body heavily sing. Unplug the cord, embrace the dark.
The orchestra is massive, 100 heavy chairs, a complicated map of heavy musical affairs. He synthesizes layer up a heavy thick design, erasing every boundary of the heavy human line. But the heavy truth of sorrow doesn't need a massive band. It only needs the friction of a heavy working hand. Just give me 6 steel strings and a heavy, quiet room. I can build a heavy sanctuary right inside the gloom. No pedals and no filters, no heavy digital trick, just the honest heavy scraping of the heavy plastic pick. The simplicity is brutal, the simplicity is pure. The only heavy medicine that serves is heavy cure. The low E string is dragging like a heavy tired foot, covered in the memory of the heavy city suit. The high E string is crying like a heavy distant bird, translating every feeling that defies a heavy word. I tune them to each other, a heavy dark line, a solitary compass in a heavy lost design. Just give me 6 steel strings and a heavy, quiet room. I can build a heavy sanctuary right inside the gloom. No pedals and no filters, no heavy digital trick, just the honest heavy scraping of the heavy plastic pick. The simplicity is brutal, the simplicity is pure. The only heavy medicine that serves as heavy cure. If the heavy power grid completely shuts entirely down, and the heavy silence falls upon the heavy panicking town, I will still be playing in the heavy candlelight, holding back the heavy terror of the heavy empty night. 6 steel strings, heavy hands, meeting all the heavy dark demands. Strip it down, keep it raw. The venue is my bedroom, the heavy door is closed. The heavy dark aesthetics are entirely unopposed. There isn't any heavy crowd, there isn't any cheer, there isn't any pressure from a heavy atmosphere. I'm playing for the shadows that are stretching on the wall, waiting for the heavy midnight temperature to fall. I am playing to an audience of heavy floating dust, caught inside the heavy streetlight with a heavy quiet trust. The motes are dancing slowly to the heavy minor key, a microscopic heavy crowd that only I can see. I do not need the heavy validation of a hand. I am perfectly contented in this heavy, empty land. The industry is screaming for the heavy viral hit, demanding that you sacrifice the heavy, honest grit. But I am hoarding all the music in the heavy, silent chest, keeping the acoustic heavy secrets heavily compressed. The best performances are heavy, absolutely alone, sinking into the heavy marrow of the heavy bone. I am playing to an audience of heavy floating dust, caught inside the heavy streetlight with a heavy quiet trust. The motes are dancing slowly to the heavy minor key, a microscopic heavy crowd that only I can see. I do not need the heavy validation of a hand. I am perfectly contented in this heavy, empty land. Let the heavy superstars perform inside the heavy glare. I prefer the heavy texture of the heavy, empty air, a private heavy ceremony in the heavy, silent dark, leaving absolutely zero heavy. Public mark. Play it soft, play it slow. Let the heavy dancing dust modes flow. No applause, just the sound.
The subway wind is howling like a heavy, angry ghost. I am leaning right against the heavy concrete peeling post. The case is open wide to catch the heavy falling coins, while the heavy damn freezing settles in the heavy joints. The commuters rush right past me, a heavy blurry line, refusing to acknowledge the acoustic heavy sign. I wrap the Busker's heavy coat around my heavy frame, a heavy woolen armor and the heavy game. The music is a heavy beggar kneeling in the dirt, trying to pull a heavy penny from the heavy daily hurt. The acoustic guitar echoes off the heavy tile, paying for survival by the heavy gritty mile. The strings are getting rusty from the heavy damp breath. I am playing a rehearsal for a heavy freezing bed. A businessman approaches and he drops a heavy dime, a tiny compensation for the heavy wasted time. I don't pause the heavy rhythm, I don't give a heavy smile, I just let the heavy metal hit the heavy velvet pile. I wrap the Busker's heavy coat around my heavy frame, a heavy woolen armor is a heavy nameless game. The music is a heavy beggar kneeling in the dirt, trying to pull a heavy penny from the heavy daily hurt. The acoustic guitar echoes off the heavy tile, paying for survival by the heavy gritty mile. We are the heavy ghosts that haunt the heavy transit lines, offering a heavy moment of acoustic dark designs. We take the heavy background noise and bend it to the chord, a heavy unacknowledged and a heavy poor reward. Strum the rust, feel the cold, watch the heavy transit story unfold. Keep the cold tight, keep the rhythm. You look at the beginner with their heavy, fragile skin, waiting for the heavy, painful journey to begin. The heavy metal strings will slice the heavy fingertips and force a heavy curse right off the heavy, trembling lips. You cannot buy the heavy armor, you cannot fake the trade. The heavy physical resistance must be heavily handmade. It takes callouses and time to play the heavy dark truth. You have to sacrifice the softness of the heavy tender youth. The skin must turn to heavy leather on the heavy friend, to pay the heavy toll of the acoustic heavy debt. The thicker that the heavy skin begins to finally grow, the deeper that the heavy acoustic emotion starts to flow. I run my heavy thumb across the tips of all the four, a heavy, rough texture that is ready for the war. They do not feel the heavy burning of the heavy heat. They have successfully managed a heavy, dark defeat. The pain has been internalized, the heavy nerve is dead, leaving only heavy music playing in the head. It takes callouses and time to play the heavy, dark truth. You have to sacrifice the softness of the heavy, tender youth. The skin must turn to heavy leather on the heavy fret, to pay the heavy toll of the acoustic heavy debt. The thicker that the heavy skin begins to finely grow, the deeper that the heavy acoustic emotion starts to flow. The heavy friction is a teacher. The heavy friction is a guide. It forces all the heavy weakness entirely outside, until the heavy hand becomes an extension of the wood, and the heavy folk tradition is entirely understood. Press the steel, build the skin, let the heavy true playing finally begin. Callouses remain, time goes on. I bought it from a pawn shop in the heavy driving rain, a heavy instrument carrying a heavy unknown pain. The finish was entirely scratched, the heavy binding loose. A survivor, a heavy and a beautiful abuse. But the heaviest detail was the metal on the neck, a heavy geographic map of a heavy nervous wreck. Look at the worn frets, the heavy divots in the brass, where 1,000 heavy sorrows were allowed to heavily pass. The metal has surrendered to the heavy pressing hand, creating a topography of a heavy desperate lawn. I place my heavy fingers in the heavy worn grooves and feel exactly how the heavy ghost of music moves.
second fret is hammered from a heavy minor chord, a heavy constant pleading to a heavy absent Lord. The fifth fret is a heavy valley, deep and heavily wide, where the heavy bending solos used to heavily reside. I didn't make the damage, but I carry on the weight, inheriting the heavy burden of the heavy metal fate. Look at the worn frets, the heavy divots in the brass, where 1,000 heavy sorrows were allowed to heavily pass. The metal has surrendered to the heavy pressing hand, creating a topography of a heavy desperate land. I place my heavy fingers in the heavy worn grooves and feel exactly how the heavy ghost of music moves. The playing focuses heavily on sliding into notes, emphasizing the physical fretboard. The heavy instrument remembers what the heavy human fails. It keeps the heavy record in the heavy metal trails. I am just a temporary tenant in the heavy wooden frame, adding my own heavy friction to the heavy quiet game. Feel the groove, press it down. Where the heavy, like a heavy quiet crowd. Worn frets, heavy history.
The rent is getting heavier, the heavy air is sick, the heavy city machinery is running entirely too quick. The heavy notifications are a heavy toxic swarm. I cannot find a quiet place to weather out the storm. So I am packing up the heavy case and leaving in the dark, abandoning the heavy chase and the heavy social mark. I'm taking the acoustic heavy retreat to the cabin in the pines, where the heavy architecture loses all its heavy lines. No heavy cell reception, no heavy flashing screen, just the heavy raw reality of the heavy dark green. The indie folk survival is a heavy quiet act, keeping the acoustic heavy center heavily intact. I chopped the heavy firewood to warm the heavy room, and listen to the heavy silence settling in the gloom. The acoustic guitar sounds completely different in the space. It fills up every corner of the heavy wooden place. There is no heavy competition with the traffic on the street. The heavy analog escape is entirely complete. I'm taking the acoustic heavy retreat to the cabin in the pines, where the heavy architecture loses all its heavy lines. No heavy cell reception, no heavy flashing screen, just the heavy raw reality of the heavy dark green. The indie folk survival is a heavy quiet act, keeping the heavy analog center heavily intact. We sing about the heavy mountains, we sing about the trees, because they are the heavy antidote to the heavy modern disease. The music is a heavy map to find the heavy way back out, to leave the heavy city and the heavy digital doubt. Drive away, lose the signal, find the heavy cabin in the heavy acoustic string. Complete retreat, heavy quiet. They try to quantize the heavy rhythm, make it heavy straight, aligning all the heavy feeling with a heavy digital gate. They auto-tune the heavy crack right out of the heavy voice, removing the humanity completely by heavy choice. The heavy modern pop song is a heavy, perfect square, but there isn't any heavy breathing human inside there. But I possess a heavy beating analog heart. I embrace the heavy, tearing of the heavy, broken art. I want the heavy tempo to speed up and heavily drag. I want the heavy vocal cords to heavily rip and sag. The imperfection is the heavy, absolute appeal, the only heavy way to know the heavy track is real. If the heavy string is buzzing, leave the heavy buzzing in. It is a heavy signature of where the heavy hands have been. If I heavily stumble on the heavy picking line, do not fix the heavy error, let it heavily align. The indie folk philosophy is heavy and unpolished. Keeping all the heavy, sterile standards heavily demolished. But I possess a heavy, beating, analog heart. I embrace the heavy, tearing of the heavy, broken art. I want the heavy tempo to speed up and heavily drag. I want the heavy vocal cords to heavily rip and sag. The imperfection is the heavy, absolute appeal, the only heavy way to know the heavy track is real. We are not heavy machines, we are heavy flawed bones. And the heavy flawed music is the only heavy home. I will take a heavy mistake over heavy perfect fake. Every single heavy choice the heavy hands can make. Keep the flow, leave the buzz, let it heavy stay exactly as it was. Analog heart, heavy truth. sitting perfectly in the heavy standard place, but the heavy dark emotion needs a different heavy space. The open strings are ringing out entirely too low. They do not match the heavy, piercing frequency I know. I reach inside the heavy pocket for the heavy metal clamp to elevate the heavy tension and the heavy quiet damp. The capo bites the heavy neck upon the heavy 7th fret, restricting all the heavy freedom in a heavy tight net. The pitch is heavily shifted to a heavy, sharper cry, reaching for the heavy clouds in the heavy dark sky. It chokes the heavy instrument to make it heavily sing, a beautiful restriction placed upon the heavy string. Geometry is altered, the heavy shapes remain the same, but the heavy sonic profile has entirely changed its name. A heavy G chord becomes a heavy piercing D, a heavy acoustic magic trick for the heavy mind to see. It brightens up the heavy dark without erasing out the pain, a heavy silver lining in the heavy pouring rain. The capo bites the heavy neck upon the heavy 7th fret, restricting all the heavy freedom in a heavy tight net. The pitch is heavily shifted to a heavy, sharper cry, reaching for the heavy clouds in the heavy dark sky. It chokes the heavy instrument to make it heavily sing, a beautiful restriction placed upon the heavy string. Sometimes the heavy standard tuning cannot heavy hold the grief. You have to clamp the heavy neck to find a heavy sharp relief, to find the exact heavy frequency where the heavy tears can fall, and let the heavy shortened strings echo through the heavy whoa. Clamp it down, shift the pitch, find the heavy, emotional, acoustic niche, the heavy bite, the sharp release. The set is completely over, the heavy hour is entirely late. The heavy fingers are exhausted by the heavy acoustic weight. The heavy dust has settled on the heavy wooden top. The heavy creative engine is preparing heavily to stop. I have heavily sung the heavy demons out into the room, leaving them suspended in the heavy midnight gloom. There is a heavy, quiet power in the heavy final strum, waiting for the heavy acoustic vibration to go entirely numb. You strike the heavy strings and let the heavy chord heavily ring, watching the decay of the heavy, beautiful thing. The silence that follows is entirely different than before. A heavy, conquered quiet resting on the heavy floor. Heavy wood releases all the heavy trapped air, a heavy exhalation of the heavy dark despair. I place the heavy instrument inside the heavy velvet case and snap the heavy latches into their heavy resting place. The heavy folk ritual is heavy and complete. Another heavy survival of the heavy acoustic street. There is a heavy, quiet power in the heavy final strum, waiting for the heavy acoustic vibration to go entirely numb. You strike the heavy strings and let the heavy chord heavily ring, watching the decay of the heavy, beautiful thing. The silence that follows is entirely different than before. A heavy, conquered quiet resting on the heavy floor. The music isn't permanent, the heavy sound will fade, but the heavy dark impression is permanently mid until the heavy morning demands another heavy song. The heavy acoustic silence is where we heavily belong. Strike the chord, let it fade. Rest the heavy hands in the heavy shade. The final strum